Hello and welcome viewers. You're watching Business World. I have with me Mr. Riyaz, founder of Kloudle. Mr. Riyaz, welcome to Business World.
Thank you so much.
So you have been bestowed with the award today.
Yeah.
Tell us the distinctive features that you have deployed over the time that had led to this thing.
Sure. So Kloudle's won the Security Startup of the Year award, and it's an honor to be here collecting the award on behalf of the entire team, right? And me being one of the founders. Our vision has always been to simplify the space of security for everybody who's involved. Right, a lot of organizations focus on security at the enterprise layer, at the human layer, at the employee layer. Right? We are working. Kloudle is essentially a cloud security SaaS product, which enables developers in small SMBs to focus on doing the stuff that they're meant to do, that is build their product, while taking the pain away of cloud security away from them, right? So we manage the cloud security for them. We essentially work as an extended team using our product, right? So developers can go back and focus on building the cool stuff that they're building as the product that they're growing, right? So we take care of the security of their cloud. Right? Because in a lot of organizations, regardless of what size it is, security is often treated as an orphan child, right? And it always comes after the fact. If something gets breached or if there's a compliance issue, then security becomes a thought, right? We want to come in very early and mitigate and identify security issues within the cloud and help them become secure.
You rightly mentioned that at times security is not prioritized as it should be, but the times is changing, and we are into this era of new technology where AI, IoT, everything is digitized and data driven. On that thing, if you can just comment over the requirement of this security, how important and what are the key parameters that need to be addressed and be sure about from a company's perspective.
Absolutely. So you mentioned IoT, and it's a very interesting area of work with AI and other things come into play. What we need to remember and understand is security can operate at different layers, right? It is always considered that the human is the weakest link in the chain of security, right? In the chain of command or in the chain of how stuff works, the humans are always considered to be the weakest link, right? I'll give you a scenario. You may have like a really long password, really complex setup, your net banking is super secure, but if you give away the OTP to a scammer, it's game over, right? The number of security things that the bank may have put in, right, is moot, right? The user becomes the weakest link in that case. With IoT, AI, all these are technology terms that come into play when you're building a setup, but the security for all of these things have to be layered, right? For an IoT instance, for example, let's take a smart fridge, right? Let's take a smart refrigerator or a smart television. All of these are IoT devices. They're connected to the internet. When you have something that's connected to the internet, you have the question of how is it connected to the internet, right? You have your wireless network, then you have the connection that goes to the data center, right? The IoT device itself. How is the firmware configured? Who's created the firmware? How are you patching this, right? Then comes how is this open to the world? What is the area of the surface area, the attack surface area of the IoT device itself? Can somebody just walk into the refrigerator, change the settings? Are there any passwords created? Right? Smart fridge is still not a very concerning device. Think about a smart pacemaker. There's human life involved. The data that the IoT device sends to the backend organization, the vendor that manages the IoT device, will still have to travel to a network, right? And a lot of cases, actually in all of the cases, these are being managed by a cloud SaaS provider. They are going to use services that are provided by, say, Amazon or Google Cloud or Azure. All of these three CSPs, cloud security, cloud service providers, have IoT services within them because they want the consumers to use IoT in the most simplest fashion as possible, right? And as fast as possible. You want them to get up to speed, get the product out in the market. So a pacemaker, a fridge, any IoT device for that matter, would connect to the vendor's backend API servers over the cloud. The backend API servers themselves will be hosted on the cloud, right? So Kloudle, the way we are securing different technologies, right? You talk about IoT, you talk about anything else. All of them still have to work on the network layer. The connectivity to the backend APIs and everything has to work on the network layer. So Kloudle comes in there by protecting your cloud, right? So we're trying to get to the root of all of these technology problems, security problems, and solve it at the cloud layer so that developers, the users, everybody can go back to working with the IoT device in its true essence, not worry about security.
With the time changing, we see that even in terms of the warfare, security and cyber security is even in the case of Ukraine, Russia also.
Absolutely.
Before the invasion, a lot of cyber attacks were done on Ukraine.
They're still going on. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in that regard, I just want to be, because as you mentioned that India can be a susceptible thing for this. Jamtara is one of the in-house हमारे country का example है. तो अगर आपको उस पर comment करना हो, and what are the from the consumer's perspective and the viewer's perspective, if you can pinpoint some of the things that as a senior citizen or as a person who can be susceptible to the cyber attacks, he or she should be watchful of, mindful of.
Yeah.
If you can pinpoint some of the behavioral aspects of it.
Sure. I have parents who are old, right? And continuous security education, although it is a term that you wouldn't have thought about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, is a thing, right? I think we need to change one important aspect of how we deal with these threats that exist out there by educating pretty early on. The generation of today, the youngsters who go to school and colleges, cybersecurity has to become a mandate about how they carry on with their education, regardless of what stream. You're not science, you're not engineering, regardless of what stream of education you choose. Right? You need to continue working with the cybersecurity as one of the subjects that you work with. For the elders within your family or within in your neighborhood, as I said, like the example earlier I gave you of humans being the weakest chain, right? You would want to ensure that key aspects of how to deal with scams, right? Understanding that not the OTP, especially banks, keep telling you that we will never ask you for an OTP, right? No bank employee will ask you. Nobody is supposed to ask you an OTP. You're not supposed to give away your OTP. Because when you go back to the bank and say, hey, I've lost 20,000 rupees, right? The first thing that the bank or the police will ask you, did you give away the OTP? And then they can't help you in such cases, because otherwise the onus of security lies with the bank to provide the security. But if you've given away the OTP, the onus has been transferred to you as a consumer. Right? Shared responsibility between the service provider, the bank, and the consumer, the user.
Knowledge of the code.
Exactly. It's in their hands. So ensuring that education is created right at the beginning, the youngsters of our country today, get them to understand cybersecurity. The elders in the family, educate them about the dangers. You understand yourself first, the dangers of providing your OTP, providing your email address, your personal, your name, your any other personal information on the internet. People have a lot of sensitive information being shared, and I keep talking about this to a lot of young people in the country, like colleges especially. There are, for the sake of internet validation, for example, you'd want to post about where you're traveling. People post photos of their credit card, their boarding passes because they're traveling in business class. All of this can be tied back to you, can be used to create a profile, right? Simply by using geotagging information, for example, of your photograph, they can identify where you've been, where your house is. And then the threat becomes real. A stalker could identify you from your Instagram photos, find out everything about you, your birthday, what place you've been to, where you stay, and could stop you in the real world. Right, the threat suddenly becomes very physical. So we need to ensure as a society we understand cybersecurity at all levels. Schooling, in the family, with people who use the internet, youngsters whose minds can easily be influenced. Right, in today's generation with the rampant use of social media, they need to be made aware of the dangers.
So चलता है वाला attitude has to do away with, and we have
ऐसा तो क्या है मेरे पास जो attacker use कर लेगा.
So that,
but when the threat becomes real, then it's really scary. We've had people who I know a couple of cases where people have put in photos on the internet and their ex-boyfriends or the people have found them, and even though they've changed their phone number, they've managed to figure out where they stay and
that can be scary.
Exactly, yeah, right.
You come from a service sector, and if we look at India's export revenue, it's mostly service driven.
Yes.
If you would like to comment over what is the prospectus ahead for cyber security exports, how will it come forward in the coming years, and if you can comment over that.
That's a tricky question. You have to understand that there are too many things at play here. cybersecurity is not isolated from the world, right? There are people in other countries who buy services from India. A lot of companies in India, cybersecurity, the Office of Cybersecurity is an offering. We run our team out of Bangalore with our data centers in AWS and Google Cloud, sitting in different countries. The thing I'm trying to point to is that regardless of which country you work out of, cybersecurity as a service is going to be an extremely lucrative and prospective business out there. The thing that comes with it is trust. How much, and not to name or shame any countries, but say the Americas, the US, for example, or any other countries in the Americas will probably not buy cybersecurity services from, not to name or shame any country, but Pakistan, for example, right? But if you've noticed, there are certain companies who have their tech team sitting out of Lahore, right? Like DigitalOcean, for example, is a very prominent cloud provider apart from AWS and Google Cloud and Azure. DigitalOcean has their offices working out of Pakistan, right? And they're really tech savvy. Not everybody is a black sheep. Not everybody is working against the interest of the country itself, right? So India prospectively has a lot to offer because the trust that Indians have built over the years with a lot of other organizations outside we have Indians everywhere. We have a lot of Indians heading the prominent management positions in a lot of companies, right? So the trust is present. And with trust, cybersecurity is the basis, the foundation of cybersecurity. If you want to sell the service to somebody else, is trust.
Which other countries are doing at par with the Indian standards and Indian trust? Developing countries, if you can like.
I'd say Indonesia is doing well. Philippines also, to some level. There are a couple of others that are in the Middle East. Like say Saudi has a couple of interesting companies. Israel has always been top-notch with their cybersecurity game. More importantly, it's relevant here to understand that the organization may be split across multiple continents, multiple countries, right? But the core teams often sits in countries that are developing or not in the US, right? A lot of the Israeli teams, for example, a lot of companies in Israel, their teams they have offices in the US, but their teams are sitting out of Tel Aviv, right? Yeah, it's spread across cross-country. Chinese companies, there are a bunch of them. As long as there's trust with the organization, right, and the moral ground of cybersecurity as wanting to protect the assets of the customer who's put their trust in us. If that is present, then we are way ahead of a lot of other folks out there.
Okay, so thankfully we'll reach an ecosystem where be it any country, like China has a very good data protection thing. Yes. India is coming up with it.
Yes.
US after the whole Microsoft thing, they have also been very stringent on it. Hopefully we'll reach the point where we will do all the best for your business.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for talking to us.